So anyway, like I was saying, before, so I was doing everything. I like to admit that I was doing everything possible to avoid Shield. Before I started making it, but it's just like I had that creative itch, and you couldn't like satisfy that creative itch until like it goes away, until you actually scratch it, right? So that Arrested Development intro that I made, it took me a grand total of 10 hours to make. I mean, you would think it's pretty stupid. It's like under 30 seconds, but yet it still took me 10 hours because here's the thing. I had to, first of all, like I already pre-recorded for another episode that we did, the introduction, like, you know, now the story of a horrible podcast that became even worse, and, you know, it's up to one host, you know, that, you know, yada yada yada. But like I already recorded that for an Arrested Development episode that we did before. So what made it transpire? So I was like, okay, I already have the audio. I got to do something with it. So what I did was I was like, okay, if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this right. So I looked at the actual intro for the actual Arrested Development intro, and I synced it to where like the timing of the characters matched perfectly with the people that we already have. Some people play double roles, because let's face it, we don't have the cast of Arrested Development, let's be honest. So some people serve double roles. Like, for example, you take on Jeffrey Tambor and Jessica Walters role. So you play, you know, I put Alexis Soto as himself, and I was like, because you pretty much take both roles as like the older, like the old man of the group, or old woman, however you prefer. And
either which.
And plus, you always invoke the Lucille Blue of the group. So you're pretty much, that's the role that you're destined to play, as one Mr. Peter Capaldi would put it. But so I was like, okay, so how am I going to do this? How am I going to make this like shot for shot, you know, like it, but with like our own little flair? So I had to look for all the like the colors, you know, and like all that. And then I had, for each little individual frame, I had to Photoshop every frame by itself. And I made it as close to like the framing, the style, to where it pretty much matched perfectly. Like all the patterns that you see, like the orange patterns, the white and everything, like I matched it perfectly to the original Arrested Development intro. So you had that, and then after you had something like that, I was like, okay, George Bluth is wearing a hat, and I had to find a picture of you in a hat. So I found you in a picture with a hat, and I was like, okay, I found one of him. I typed up a fake little like a quick Photoshop thing of a fake newspaper article of you going ballistic again, because I forgot to because I didn't let you plug Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and that's the reason why you went berserk.
Is that what the article said?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And so like that right there is like part of it, and it's the newspaper article, to like put a little bit more oomph to our history. The newspaper's name is the Barely News.
Oh, okay.
And the date, I think, I'm not sure, I have to go back and look, but I think the date is either when we started the Barely News crew, like the first video date, or when we started Red Spotlight Entertainment. Either one of those two. But that's the date of the article, and that's where you have all that stuff. But anyway, so I had to go and picture which character was whom. Like I had to like I'm I'm the Jason Bateman thing, and I made Peter Job.
That's funny.
Nettie is maybe. George Michael is Eric. I made Tobias and Buster David. Lindsay is Alexis. And then you are you're both George.
Mr. and Mrs.
Mr. and Mrs. Bluth, or Alexis as himself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I had to do that. I had to and even to wear the picture, because you know how there's pictures and stuff like that. I had to pick trademarks of for example, the trademark that Moreno has is hand on cheek. I liked it. That's her shtick, and I found I plugged in a clip of her doing that. And I just went about it. I found I made a Polaroid of me, Nettie and Eric, and I combined all that shit. And all in all, it took me 10 hours to get the syncing right, draw all the little arrows. I mean, it was a ridiculous mess, but I honestly was very proud of it. Doing projects like that, just making intros and trying to make it a parody, just parody editing. I love that. The Walt Disney thing that I did.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a. I mean, it sounds stupid that it takes 10 hours to make something 30 seconds happen, but that's the way that editing works.
That's the way that editing works, and that's why a lot of people don't hate it. I know you mentioned our friend Nettie Valdez. She is a filmmaker. She's currently going to film school at Northridge, CSU Northridge. And as much as she loves to make movies, she notoriously loathes the editing. She loathes it entirely. To quote the Grinch,
you did it for me.
You were going to go there, so I did it for you. The editing process, and I don't know how your feelings are about it. And obviously, we're talking about the introductory video for our Red Spotlight YouTube channel, which I'll get back to in a bit because we hit a milestone of sorts.
Yeah. Wait. By the way, yeah. Is this episode a 1,000 subscription celebration episode?
Well, I mean, we have to manage a certain set of assigned happiness in our lives, right? And I feel like 2020 has been a year where we have been allowed such few joys, right? And so that's why I take the approach of you gotta get it where you can, basically. And on the night that we're recording this, we were informed by Alexis Moreno, co-panelist, co-host here of the Fantasy Fair podcast, that the YouTube channel, after how many years?
5 years, we got 1,000 subscribers.
And it's also the most hilarious thing in the world because no one watches the stuff that we put on the YouTube channel.
So the 1,000 subscribers who subscribe, thank you. Why? But also thank you.
It is a genuine question.
Yeah, because by and large, we just do this shit for fun because we know for a fact that we're not going to make any money doing this.
Yeah.
But now we can, I guess. I looked... before YouTube changed its algorithm and all that, I was just wondering how much money we have in the Red Spotlight Entertainment Bank account.
Oh my God.
The Fidelity Fiduciary Bank. We have $3.25.
That's our legacy, people. That's the equivalent of 5.5 years of work.
That's how much our shares. We're making 0.001 cents per share. You're welcome to buy into the network.
Sure.
Welcome. We'll be in the Dow in the next 200 years.
Yeah, within the next 200 years. Hopefully, fingers crossed,
Yeah.
It's also just very unusual because of all of the places where we, curate, shall we say, our library, because we have a vast library, with this podcast and of course our whole network of podcasts, literally going back 5 years. But YouTube is the lowest priority, and it always kind of has been. Maybe not at first. So I think at first it was the place where it was, I think initially it was the home of the podcast.
Yeah.
And then it moved on to, of course, the official podcast places. But, as the years have gone by, it's just not been
on the radar as much as like the regular podcast feeds, in which, because here's the thing, like the intros I make and all that it does not lead to creative endeavors onto YouTube.
Copyright, people, copyright's a fucking bitch.
Especially with the Fantasy Fair, because like there's no other thing to like capture the magic of Disney before going into the podcast, like copyrighted material, and that's unfortunate.
Which is why if the Fantasy Fair is some of the recent episodes are on YouTube, but I have to clip out the opening and the ending, otherwise it would be removed.
Yeah. So that's the reason. But if you listen to like the regular feed on like Castbox.fm and everywhere you listen to podcasts,
how about that?
How you were caught with a flat? Well, how about that?
Yeah.
Nothing like a good Rocky Horror Picture Show reference. But the thing is that when that wasn't going well, and I wanted to, kind of use that. I mean, they're not longer than 15 seconds, each little snippet. I mean, all the snippets I use of copyright material for like the montage at the beginning of every single Fantasy Fair episode, with the exception of the retrospects and what have you. It's like, 4 seconds. I don't use any longer than that, and I try to make it condense and, to like put you down the memory lane of all the monopolistic things that Disney has acquired over the years and done. So to do that, I had to, splice it and do
Yeah, it's one of your trademarks, as an editor, is you really love, clipping together all of these different, musical motifs or direct quotes from a whole bunch of stuff. And look, I'll say this. I know that you've long been criticized for the length, and I'm talking about early days here, of some of the intros for podcasts. I think of like early Red Spotlight podcasts or maybe even some audio commentaries where I think you would have like the full audio, like the whole audio of trailers for the movie that we would be talking about in that episode. And like, I never thought the problem with that was that it was like edited badly. It got me pumped to like hear this awesome commentary about like this movie, and it put me back in there. I guess the issue was that sometimes it was like 5 minutes long, depending on what it was, 3, 4, 5 minutes long.
That's why I resorted to looking like later on during the whole entire run. I looked back at trying to find the TV spots, because that gets you, gets the message down. But I want to go into like my inspiration for that as well. My inspiration for like the trailers and all that. First of all, I like the idea of like because before a movie you see trailers and stuff like that. So I think that would have been like, so I wanted to make that feeling resonate, but also like I remember when I was a young kid, I would listen to a show. This is precursor to my Howard Stern lovings. There was a radio duo by the name of Mark and Brian, and before they talk about a movie, they would play a little bit clip of a movie and all that stuff. I mean, it's pretty much a comedy, a radio show that would locally, it would be played on 93.7 KCLB. But when they were on it, they would like play, oh, you know, and here's a clip from the latest Spider-Man movie, and they just play like a little clip of, you know, like a TV spot, and that would like get the juices flowing, you know, and that's what I was like trying to go for with that. And that came clear across to me. That's exactly why I always liked them. I may not have always communicated that I liked them to you, because there was a lot of other voices involved that were like constantly saying, "This is so fucking long, Kyle." You know, they had a point. People's attention spans are like limited, but at the same time, like, you're making this for you, and it's what you like. Yeah. And I liked just about every single intro you've ever made, even though sometimes the one where I got a little annoyed. I think it was earlier this year. We're like, all right, let's change the opening intro of Red Spotlight again for like the 5th time. Yeah.
But the thing is, but we had to, though. We had to.
Yeah, but overall, it's a rehash of an old intro, so really, it's not really changing much.
Oh, not that. I'm sorry, that wasn't the one. The one where I was a little like, I wasn't annoyed at that one. That one I perfectly understood. I think the one that I was a little bit more annoyed with was the outro that we recently changed a few months back. But again, you were covering our asses because apparently we were using something that could later be copyrighted. So, you know.
Yeah, and I just wanted that to be, you know, I want this to eventually, keyword eventually, to become profitable.
Yeah, 15 years from now.
I mean, if it doesn't wind up making a cent, I mean, other than the $3.25 we have,
yeah, like, you know, let's not kid ourselves here. Like, we do this because we love to do this. We love to talk about this stuff. We love to just have a podcast. I think it's been overly explained at this point that it's something that we just have to do because it's kind of a passion for us. And so like we would love the opportunity at some point for this to become a profession or profitable in any way, like a lot of people do on the internet. But if that never happens, it's fine. I don't think we're at a point where like any of us want to like step away from this. I don't know.
I think
if that day will ever come, honestly.
I think what would be cool is that, you know, I would love, like, it would be cool to like go back and listen to some of my parents and their friends' conversations. You know, just like what did you guys talk about, you know, when you guys were, you know, before us? And but the thing that I think would be cool is that if any of us eventually do have children of our own, and that's a major if, you know, if we, you know, decide that route, we could be like, hey, this is Uncle Alexis and, you know, and I, you know, talking, you know, having conversations like we, you know, normally did back then, or like, hey, this is Peter and I, we're having a discussion on Moonraker, for example.
Yeah.
Or Scott, or this is where your father became in love with the movie Scott Pilgrim versus the World. And they'll be like, they'll raise their hand and they'll be like, Dad, why did you compare Aunt Alexis to a fucking roller coaster ride?
Oh my God. I forgot about that. Oh my God.
I'll be like,
oh my God.
I'll be like, I thought it was good at the time. I thought it was a good idea at the time, but Dad, it wasn't.
That was such a disaster because it was literally misinterpreted in every way you possibly could, and misinterpret that opening by literally all of us. We all had like different like ideas about what the fuck it was you were talking about. It was a hilarious opening. It definitely is memorable, although I'm sure you wished you would have pre-recorded that.
Yeah, or at least like cut it like after I said Twilight Zone or Spotlight Zone, sorry.
Oh my, you see, well, you know.
But you know what's fun? You know what's fun though is that we have little quirks and moments like that, you know.
Yeah.
And like little inside
Absolutely.
jokes, you know, that developed because of, you know, us recording, and like Sky Squad, you know, that's forever gonna live in, you know, in
Future.
In future, that's forever gonna live in, you know, in either famously or infamously, you know, just like the way that we, you know, communicate with each other. And I think that's the key right here, is that it's just a bunch of friends dicking around. And on like that's what should be, you know, like the key thing, just dicking around, talking about movies or anything like that, what makes us mad and all that. And Peter is very right, of course, when he does say that this is cheaper than therapy. Although I do recommend you guys do therapy. I recommend everybody do therapy because it's good for the mind and good for the soul. But yeah, it is definitely cheaper than therapy. I'll say that firsthand. It may be emotionally taxing at times because certain websites don't like to hold their end of the bargain by saying that, hey guys, it's free ? You know,
It's free, but they never say for how long, and then we're caught with our pants down, having to like literally pick up our entire history and push it somewhere else.
Why don't we just take all the fees and push it somewhere else? But yeah, I mean, it's clearly like it is taxing. It is a lot of work that we do. I mean, come on, we're recording and not making any money off of it. It's except for the $3.25.
Yeah,
but overall, we just do it for shits and giggles. To be honest,
yeah. We also find meaning in it in other ways. Like I'll keep saying that every single year as the podcast ages, the quality of the sound only continues to improve and improve and improve. The quality of the editing continues to improve and improve and improve. So there's a whole bunch of those, you know, kind of skills that we can pat ourselves in the back for, really. But I also say, as like emotionally taxing as it can be sometimes, and I think a lot of us do feel this way, that it definitely was an advantage to have had our usual conversations, our usual contact with each other as friends, our entire group of friends, having already be this basically virtual system, you know, because there wasn't really much of an adaptation. And I know that especially this year than any other year, I've really depended on, you know, these shows to maintain stability in my mental health.
Yeah, I get you. So that's a way that this podcast has helped you in, you know, your real life, is that it's just helped you mentally. Like, for example, this podcast that we do, all the podcasts that we do, all four of them, it's helped me keep sustainable conversations, unlike I was able to do before. Like, I'd be like, hey, what's your favorite, you know, something, and then bounce off of that. And I learned how to like bounce off of things, you know, and that's helped me in the long way.
You also have to do that as a host, basically, is that's how you learn, is you got to keep the conversation going until you're out of time.
Yeah. Or unless like we're out of thoughts, you know, and then we just call it
Which
quits.
is usually the case. We usually do shows where we talk each other out until we're just done.
Yeah, we were just like, okay, bye. But yeah, learning how to talk as well. Learning my own voice, learning where my voice is fucking grating, because like when you're editing and you're hearing your own voice, it's a different kind of ball game that you do. I mean, I don't know how that is for you. Do you find your voice annoying at all when you're editing, or when you began editing, or are you used to it now? How do you feel about that now?
Not anymore.
Not
anymore. I think at first, probably like the first year or so, because that's the first time you hear like your voice back to you, and everybody has the same reaction when they hear themselves back on tape. It's like, what, do I really sound like that?
Is that my voice?
Yeah, literally.
But yeah, God, my voice is still grating, but I'm still trying to work on it. Like I have a very nasally cadence in my voice naturally, and that freaking sucks ass, major ass, and I'm trying to like be better about that, trying to like be aware of how my voice sounds and try to like change the timbre of it, and change the octave if this sounds a little bit more liner like this, and just like bring it down a little bit, and I try to be very conscious about that. I mean, it's constantly thinking, which is fucking exhausting, but it makes editing a lot easier.
Yeah, and look, I know a lot of the initial pushback against, I guess, your voice from your side was like the sound of it, and that is a big fucking deal, especially if it's an audio program like what we're doing, right? And that's it's just a reality that people with nasally voices have to work twice as hard to get their voices to sound better, and it sucks, but I think you've been doing that rather successfully. It didn't help that, like, initially, I know, like, the very first practice recording we ever did of anything with the first incarnation of a team, because it was the very first, and I know we all had discussed previously that of like how this was going to go, but it didn't help, I guess, the cadence in your voice at the point, because it was apparent that you didn't know where to go, basically. Like, yeah, sometimes the conversation would get away from you and it would go like somewhere else, and sometimes you can get yourself lost, and I mean this for anybody, and we've all been there. Just get yourself lost in your own thoughts to the point where you forget what it was you were going to say. Yeah. So, and you're not the only one. I know that Alexis and David have said throughout the years that the podcast and them, having to sustain a conversation on the podcast has helped them immensely with their communication skills in everyday life. And I think that's a positive.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty much speech therapy as well. This is like the King's Speech, directed by Tom Hooper. Yeah. Oh, speaking of Tom Hooper, I listened to Les Mis for the full soundtrack for the first time in like eons. Still a fucking bop. My favorite song is "Being Alive." Sorry, that was a horrible attempt at a joke. But I did listen back. And it brought me memories. It brought me a lot of memories of my cringy senior year of high school.
I don't remember you looking back on it as cringy.
Yeah, I look back at it now. I'm just like, oh my god! Like, you thought you were Javert. You thought you were this tortured soul. You're this emo kid who thought he was a tortured soul like Javert. That's the reason why you related to Javert and sang Stars.
A lot.
Constantly.
You sang it a lot.
Yeah.
In front of people, multiple audiences. There were several shows.
Yeah, there were several shows, all sold out.
It was pretty much a captive audience in most of those cases.
Yeah.
It wasn't, I think, of their own volition or will, if we're being real there. But yeah, no, it's a wonderful thing, I think, what we've been able to, have here for ourselves. And I think it's definitely paid off, at least to our own benefit, as things are going. And it's, it is the last month of a year, it's going to be over. And this is the time where we get to be a little reflective. Although it is strange, right, in this case, as it is, as compared to other cases, because there really wasn't much of a year.
No,
this time.
This is the year that time forgot. But, I guess there's one every millennium.
Yeah, and I guess we had to we had to do it this time. We had to do it this year.
Yeah,
it's so crazy, dude. It's so crazy. I honestly
first
wonder
year of a new decade too.
Yeah, that wasn't a very promising start, was it?
No, we'll see where the path leads to. It could be the dark side, because, as you know, the dark side is a pathway to many abilities some would consider to be unnatural.
And that movie notwithstanding, and just in general, it's so crazy coming off of 2019, which I thought was an amazing year. I thought it was, maybe not in every aspect of our lives.
Yeah, not like politically or anything like that, but
or personally, we've had our trials and tribulations, of course. But the movies.
Look at world I'm coming through, because I'm almost there.
The movies always are kind of like these events in our lives, which is why a lot of us are friends and why we do a podcast on, all of the movies constantly.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of like our center in a way. Like, that's where we commune. That's where we congregate, as you say, as you will anyway.
It keeps you focused.
It's our pastime. It's so surreal. And I think we take it so, I feel like we take it much more personally than most people. And even in what I guess the point of what I'm saying at that point is that in the most distressing of times, the cinematic experience has never failed to uplift me in times in which I desperately needed to be uplifted. And oftentimes those are the years where you have some pretty great fucking movies. I know I saw this retweet by the lovely and talented Miss Alexis Moreno. Follow her on Twitter. She is quite hilarious. But the retweet was about, basically the gist of it was, man, I really miss walking out of a movie as if I just, walked out of a dimension and back to real life.
Yeah,
it was an escape.
Especially when it was a good movie.
Yeah. If it's a bad movie, it's a little torturous.
That's how I felt after coming out of Rogue One. I was just like sucked back in time, and that's how I felt. That's what a movie is supposed to do, and
Mm-hmm.
the movie is supposed to be something gratuitously uplifting, to say the least, because a movie is supposed to, take you out of the realm of reality, and that's what a movie is supposed to do, and put you into the journey of whoever you're watching and the characters. And That's what a good movie is supposed to do. Now, a bad movie is, gets you pissed, and instead it sucks you back into the reality that you're that you're in, and it just boils you to no end. But and again, I like to case in point, but this is like the most like emotionally, tipped over I've been with a movie. Rogue One. I cried for a solid half hour after the end, just completely bawling because it brought me back to, being a kid watching Star Wars for the first time, and yes, I've told that story many a times, but that's a case in point of what a good movie is supposed to do for you.
Yeah.
It's supposed to get you in your feels. It's supposed to, do that, and it's supposed to for those who are invested in movies, it's supposed to be somewhat of a spiritual connection between real and feel. that sounds good. Oh my god, that was good. Real and feel. I gotta remember that.
I guess it's one of those things that really can't be explained all that well. Either like you feel it or you don't. And there are a lot of people, I feel, all over the world who are like you and I that had that experience. And I will say, for all of this talk there's been lately of like movie theaters dying, as the last episode of Red Spotlight, David and I kind of cautioned people who were saying that, because while Tenet did massively flop here in America, in large part because COVID, theaters weren't fully % open. In some major markets, they were completely closed, and also only 18% of movie theater goers went, period. Mm-hmm. That's bad. But if you look at the international markets, it did very respectfully, considering the restrictions that were put in place all over the world because of a pandemic. The appetite for the theatrical experience, I think to an extent, will always be there.
It's still there, I mean, even though it's like quite absent that we have today. And
for understandable reasons, of course.
Yeah, because like, who the fuck wants to go to a movie theater when, this shit show is happening? But that's where, because like I see tweets like, I can't wait to go back to a movie theater. I'll literally watch anything,
Yeah. Just the experience of it going, I really miss it. I miss driving to it. I miss getting popcorn. I miss just even watching the damn trailers. The whole thing was
popcorn.
Just,
I miss fucking movie theater popcorn. That would be my dinner for the night too.
Yeah.
I mean, not to the detriment of of health and health's sake, but yeah. Like that whole vibe is just something, and also like talking about it, on not only doing an after dark about it, but like the drive home, just like being like, oh my god, like this part, this is like, oh my god, that one part, and just like laughing. I remember coming out of fucking Mary Poppins Returns and driving home, and we were cruising and just talking about the movie,
and listening to the music,
listening to the soundtrack,
Yeah.
And I like that's a part of the key element,
right?
That I think that a lot of people do in fact miss. I mean, because like that was like, again, it is an escape, escaping from reality. No matter what world you are in, and no matter what situation, you find yourself like, oh, that was a good story, and everybody loves a good story, and it like nothing could replace that,
No, nothing can. And so it's going to be really interesting, like when in a couple of days you're going to be watching, especially Wonder Woman 1984 and Soul in particular, when they both will drop Christmas Day on their respective streaming services, HBO Max and Disney Plus, of which we'll have plenty of reviews on both Red Spotlight and Fantasy Fair. Keep an eye out for that on Christmas Day. But it is going to be something, I feel like, in essence, we'll be reviewing a movie like we do any other movie. We're going to experience it via streaming. And I wonder how we're going to feel about, only because of how cognizant we are of the situation around it, I really wonder how we're going to feel about the fact that we got this at home versus how we should have gotten it on the big screen.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the first movie out the gate is going to be?
What do you mean?
When we're fresh out of the pandemic, when you predict where the pandemic is going to be, granted the vaccines work and the stay-at-home orders work and all that.
My answer to that question, it is impossible to predict. It is impossible to predict what will be the first movie. It really is, because we don't know. Here's what I've been hearing, and I think I discussed this. I did mention. Well, I think David actually asked me this question last time, as a matter of fact, and I said to him that, "Fuck if I know," but I'll give you my best guess, right? So, the first responders, that's not necessarily the right acumen there, but the first line people, the first priority people are going to be getting the Pfizer vaccine this month. And then begins the staging of rolling it out to the public. I have heard very contradictory, not that far off, but I've heard 3 different accountings of when people expect the vaccine, whether it be Pfizer or Moderna, which are the most successful ones thus far, for it to be distributed to the main public, right? So I hear the earliest April. I also heard May, and I also heard June. So between April and June is when the expectation should be that the vaccines would have been made widespread for the general public to get, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Black Widow is kind of the orbit there, right? So Black Widow is coming out May the 6th. I still think what's likely to happen is it'll be right in the middle of all of the vaccines happening, unless they happen earlier than expected. Maybe by some miracle, maybe it happens early April, late March. But I still think there's a likelihood that they do a premium access for Black Widow, only because I don't think they can delay it, considering that they have like 3 other Marvel movies coming out that same year, right? So
right.
I don't think that one's going to be it. I still think the safest, modest prediction would be August. Maybe late July, but August. I think by that point, with the vaccine being effective, things should calm down. What also should help is the fact that there's going to be a new administration that is going to be more hands-on in handling the virus. And by handling, I mean actually handling it, and like making sure it's not an uncontrollable spread, as it is literally every place in the country right now. So if all those things go according to plan, there is hope that by late summer you can start to see a semblance of normalcy, a return to a new normal, if you will, if that's how you want to frame it, right? That's where my head is at the moment. That's where I think things are likely going to be. And what the first movie is, maybe, who knows?
Tom and Jerry.
No.
Imagine like that makes like $1 billion just for the sheer fact that that's the first movie.
Well, it can't and it won't, because of course that's going to be doing a simultaneous HBO Max thing. So
yeah,
that's obviously off the table and out of the question.
I hear rumors that they're that Warner Brothers is currently talking with Roku developers.
I've heard that too, and I heard more concretely that they do expect to reach some sort of agreement in time for Wonder Woman.
Interesting.
I mean, you and Peter are Roku users. I think you might want to have HBO Max so you can watch Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
Alexis and I have Fire Stick, and it was made available only just like a few weeks ago on Fire Stick.
Oh, by the way, like I want to save Wonder Woman 84 for when, if we decide to do a screening of it sometime, during New Year's or whatever.
Yeah, that sounds. I was thinking of doing something like that as well because I wanted it to be a new experience, right? I am gonna watch Soul for sure, though. I like a Christmas Day, but no, it's a very interesting time. Look, we have been talking about movies and the movie business for 5 years now, and holy fuck, have things just changed drastically since we first started out, talking about all of this and following all the latest developments. And I don't think we ever imagined ourselves being in a position where there had been basically no year with movies.
Yeah.
And then all the latest shifts that we're seeing with HBO Max.
2020, the year without movies.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coming soon, whenever.
Yeah, Peter wants to do a top 10. I just don't know how we can muster that, considering what a year we've had.
I mean, there's movies that came out this year that are definitely on my watch list before the year. Before the year, I think there'll be enough to talk about. I mean, it won't be like tentpole, blockbuster films per se, but there's definitely going to be a discussion, I feel. So yeah, this year this month I'm starting to watch movies that that I've been wanting to watch this year, that have been released this year, to talk about, and I've been trying.
Yeah, you gotta try harder than we normally would, because by this point during the year we would have seen most of everything. We still, every December, there is a sense of feeling overwhelmed because there's a whole bunch of festival awards films, art films, indie films that are being talked about that we all have interest in watching.
Rose's favorite season.
Yeah, absolutely. So is mine. That we want to watch, although sometimes they're not as accessible, but there should be some good stuff.
After Francis, Catherine O'Hara should be the next Pope.
That would be hysterical.
It would be great.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I just hope I don't know. I really, really am looking forward to the day we go back for reals. But until then, we have the next best thing. And I think we had a relatively successful mini event, 3 people, limited event in my backyard with Peter's own screen, with Mulan. But I am really excited this time because based on what I've been reading, Wonder Woman 84 is actually going to be good. So that should lighten things up.
Yeah. Yeah, boy.
A good movie really helps.
And Soul looks phenomenal. So,
yeah.
So we're looking forward to 2 things. Also, some other things. I want to watch Emma, which is with it's a Jane Austen based thing with Anya Taylor-Joy. I'm also looking into watching a Queen's Gambit.
People talk about a lot about that one. I just finished watching The Crown.
Really?
Loved it.
Oh, all 4 seasons?
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
Oh, yeah. Dude,
well, that shouldn't surprise me.
That is no. I watched it in a week. It was, oh my god, it was so good. Alexis and I are doing a recap Crown series in January, so
okay,
that's our next segment show. Of course, you're welcome to join.
I should get on to watching that. Shouldn't I?
It's really good. Honestly, I loved it. It was so fun. I turn on I told this to David. I said this to David. Every episode, I'm like, okay, who's gonna get stabbed in the back this episode? Honestly, it's the most.
It's like sophisticated Kardashians, huh?
It's honestly supplanted House of Cards was for me. Only in this case, it's not as if the main characters are straight up villains. They're much more gray. And they are likable. All of the characters are likable as well as, to an extent, unlikable because of the situations that you find yourself in. But it is a very, very good program. Yeah, I was kind of sad when I finished season 4 because, like, damn it, I want season 5 now, and that's not coming until 2022.
Wow.
Like, shit. Damn it, fuck you, Alexis. Whatever. We'll watch. We'll talk about it next month. Anyway, yeah. I don't know if you've heard some other movies. Like, I'm really looking forward to Nomadland. That it features Frances McDormand in the lead.
I've heard about that. Yeah.
And it's directed by Chloe Zhao, who directed The Writer and then also is doing next year's Eternals movies. So.
Ooh, okay. All right. Little flavor for what's to come and all that shit.
Speaking of The Crown, The Father with Olivia Colman and Anthony Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins' performance is being raved about for that one. So I'm looking forward to those especially.
Hold on. Let me look at my letterbox to see what I'm...
Yeah, that really helps.
Ooh, I watched a movie recently.
Hey, a movie.
Hey, a movie. I don't know if you heard about it, Uncle Frank.
Yeah, I've actually been meaning to. It's on the list somewhere on Amazon Prime with Paul Bettany.
Yeah,
I heard it was good. How was it?
It's good. It's pretty good.
Another one on Prime that just dropped. I think it's called The Sound of Metal with Riz Ahmed.
Yeah. There was a Q&A recently on I think like Sirius or Apple Music where Lars Ulrich of Metallica, he interviewed Riz because like it's a deep subject with him because Lars Ulrich is also a drummer, and so like the movie is about a deaf drummer, and so there was like an interview thing that happened, and so like I'm intrigued to see that.
I'm sure you'll love it, and I heard great things about that movie, and I saw a trailer of it, and I think Riz is a treasure. I wish I'd see him in more things. I remember when I first saw him in Nightcrawler, he was so good. A movie that people seem to have forgotten. I know that year Jake Gyllenhaal was supposed to get Best Actor nomination, but he never got it, and people were pissed that year. You saw Nightcrawler, right? Or did you never see Nightcrawler?
I don't think I've seen it.
It's with Jake Gyllenhaal, Rene Russo, Riz Ahmed. It came out 2014, I want to say. It's good. It's really good. It's about this, it's kind of fucked up. And what happens to Riz Ahmed is kind of fucked up too, so it's like... it's one of those flavors. But then I think that got him notoriety to where he was cast in Rogue One.
Okay.
And he was the pilot, I think. What was his name? Bodhi? Bodhi, was it?
Yeah.
It kind of rhymes with Rhodey, like, from what's it called?
Rhodey?
From Iron Man.
Iron Man? Yeah. I remember, it was so funny in Iron Man 2 when he shows up, he was like, Colonel James Rhodes, and he's like, Rhodey's here, and then he cuts to Don Cheadle, and he's like, I'm here, let's deal. Like kind of slow, like, undercut jab of at Terrence Howard. The sudden casting shift.
Yeah, but they handled it really well.
Yeah,
he's the new War Machine, and we're gonna go with it.
He's lasted way longer than Terrence. That's very damn sure. You know what? It's so interesting to like peek into like an alternate universe where Terrence Howard is Rhodey for the duration of the MCU. I'm
sure Marvel's happy that didn't happen because he hasn't had the most flattering headlines lately.
No.
Terrence Howard. So I'm sure they feel like they've dodged a bullet there with that recasting. And it was Terrence Howard's, I think, decision to leave anyway, right? I don't think he was dismissed. Like it was Edward Norton's decision to walk away from the role of the Hulk.
Yeah.
So,
okay, so I want to watch Borat subsequent.
oh, you haven't seen
movie film.
Borat?
No.
That's one of my favorite movies this year. I honestly, I'm not even gonna like, play coy because there's like really nothing, but like it was so good. I recently watched Lindsay Ellis. She did a video essay on Borat and why it's like how Borat 2 feels much more
Relevant,
important and relevant than the first one. Yeah, it's really good, honestly, surprisingly. It really catches you off guard, and it delivers 110% on the, oh my god, the laugh out loud comedy.
Yeah, I saw a clip of it, where he's disguised as Donald Trump, and it's just like, it's funny. I want to see The Devil All the Time.
Oh, that's right, with Tom Holland, Robert Pattinson, and a whole bunch of others on Netflix. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking of Ending Things.
Yes, that title is very. I want to see that movie, but I also don't want that movie to trigger something. It seems like one of those movies, It's very incendiary. I'm thinking of Ending Things. It kind of just says it out there.
Yeah, just like you get the gist of what it's trying to say with its own premise. I've not seen The Five Bloods yet.
Really? We did a review on that way back in July, I feel, with Alexis and Peter. Alexis was kind of meh on it. Peter liked it. I really liked it. So there was kind of a little bit of a divergence in opinion, but I thought it was a strong film. Yeah, I think you'll like it. It has some strong performances in there for sure. And it felt definitely very much of its time. I really enjoyed The Five Bloods. It's really good.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much like the gist of what like is in my radar right now.
How about Ma Rainey's Black Bottom? Are you aware what that is?
Tell me about it.
Ma Rainey's Black Bottom is, let's see here.
Is it dirty?
Tensions rise when the trailblazing mother of the blues and her band gather at a Chicago recording studio in 1927, adapted from August Wilson's play, who I believe also wrote Fences.
Yeah.
This features Viola Davis, but it more importantly features the final performance by Chadwick Boseman.
Okay, I've heard of it now. Yeah. I've heard of it. As soon as you said final performance, I'm like, okay, I know where this is going. Yeah, I want to see.
And I hear it is his finest performance.
Yeah. Well.
Ever, basically.
Ever, yeah. I'm interested in that one as well. There's a bunch this year
that one's coming out later this month, or maybe in a couple of days now on Netflix. This one I am very interested because I have the sneaking. This is a movie that should technically be very up my alley, but considering things that I've heard, I'm suspecting perhaps I may not be as thrilled with this. Have you heard of Mank?
Yes, it's about like the guy who wrote
Citizen Kane,
pretty much. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's Gary Oldman, Amanda Seyfried, and
Charles Dance, and David Fincher directing the movie, which I really like his movies. Social Network, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, Gone Girl. I think you saw The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. That was a Fincher movie, right?
God damn, that movie.
He's a great filmmaker. Yeah. I hear that this movie is very imbued with film history. So like if you're a film buff, and if you like Citizen Kane and that era, you're really going to like this movie. I've heard things like the audio itself was manipulated to sound as if it was made literally in the 30s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so Fincher definitely went all out for it. But I also am hearing things like it's more of a maybe how some people feel about Citizen Kane today. It's like how they refer to Mank. It's like this is a movie perhaps I admire and respect more than I actually love, you know? So that's the kind of buzz that I'm hearing from the movie of Mank, which has kind of tempered my expectations a little bit, because a lot of these people have also said that they needed a rewatch of the film to solidify their opinion of it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder if you have to like watch Citizen Kane in order to like.
You've seen it, haven't you?
Yeah, but like.
Yeah, you've seen it. It's a long time ago. Yeah.
At the age where I was like unappreciative of it.
Yeah, I hear a lot. Just go for it. Like, honestly, just do it. Like, I don't think this is a separate story. Like, yeah, they're writing Citizen Kane, but like, Saving Mr. Banks was sold on the idea of like this is kind of how Mary Poppins was made, but the story really wasn't about that. It was about the person who created Mary Poppins and how that came about being. So let me read this to you, right? So this is the synopsis.
But it did help to know Mary Poppins, though.
Well, in any movie that's about, let's say, another movie or based on a previous property, it definitely, you get more out of it if you already know it. But I also do feel like it is a perfectly, some, not all, but some movies can definitely stand on their own and be enjoyable enough. Like, I'll tell you this. Some of the movies that I think are kind of the poster boys for like films that you might need to do your homework on, like Infinity War and Endgame, I've had experiences with people who that was their first Marvel movie and they fucking loved it. And they they were lost with a lot of stuff, but like they loved it. So like
what the hell is a group?
No, literally, my friend E, she's from China. We were watching Infinity War, and she was asking me she was excited watching the movie. And she was asking me so many questions while watching it. And she was like, "Who are the Guardians of the Galaxy?"
Was your go-to answer? Find out on the latest episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
No, because that would be false advertising of the highest order. That would not do anything. No, I would say I
wouldn't put it past you to do that though.
No, come on. I don't want to mislead people. It's fine. I think
you're not the fake news media.
Oh my God. I think I said like I'll explain the whole thing afterward if you want me to, but they're just these group of people. That's basically what I say. It's like it's fine. So yeah, like I don't know. It depends on who you are, I feel, and it also depends on the movie. If you're enjoying a movie that's based on something else or is a continuation of something, then it's doing something right, obviously. Yeah. So this was the synopsis here is 1930s Hollywood is reevaluated through the eyes of scathing social critic and alcoholic screenwriter Herman Mankiewicz, therefore the name Mank, as he races to finish the screenplay of Citizen Kane. So it seems as if like this is about the person who wrote it and who he was and what he was doing while that was happening. Anyway, that's what it sounds like to me.
Hopefully it is the Citizen Kane of biography movies.
Yeah. What was it saying? The one that I really though am excited, like legitimately, like I need to see it now is Soul.
Yeah. Like the way, because like that one little clip, because I've been like trying to steer clear from like
any material
whatsoever, and I want to go into it clean.
I've seen all of it, and they really show nothing.
I know, but like the little I know about it, the better for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like with Onward, I only saw like one little trailer, and that was it. And that like propelled what I previously thought about the movie. And like that's the way I want to feel about Soul. And like trying to like, what's that word? Something your expectation.
Trying to temper your expectations?
Yeah, I'm trying to do that, especially with one, and also with Wonder Woman in
1984. Yeah. You don't want to be. Yeah, there's always an expectations game where like you don't want to get your hopes up in the stratosphere to where even if it's really good, you'll end up disappointed. And we've been there several times with different movies, I feel.
Like truth be told, with Confession Time, let's wind the clocks back to 2017. That's how I felt initially about Star Wars The Last Jedi, because my expectation for like this great bombastic Star Wars movie, and the initial run, when I was like talking about it, I liked the movie a lot when I saw it, but like I didn't love it initially in first viewing like I do now. And like because of that expectation, like this is the follow-up The Force Awakens, and I love The Force Awakens, and to like, let's see where this goes, and let's see if it matches that. And so the first time I watched The Force Awakens with you guys, I'm not Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, I didn't like, that's what happened. Yeah, and on first viewing, it took me like one or two different viewings to like firmly say that I love the movie. But like the first time I was like, I liked the movie a lot. It was a good Star Wars movie, but like it didn't like hit me like The Force Awakens did. And still to this day, like even though like The Last Jedi is phenomenal filmmaking and all that stuff, it didn't hit me as hard, and it still doesn't hit me as hard as The Force Awakens does, and that's just because like the memory's tied with it, and
it's special. It's a special memory.
Yeah, and it's a core memory. But like it makes me like that, just that feeling of like Star Wars coming back into my life, loudly and proudly. And like I did, like that's where I have that thing, and I'm constantly scared to like get into movies like that again, because like now I absolutely adore Last Jedi, but like I'm afraid to like do that with other movies to give it the same treatment, because like I want to give it like the first chance kind of scenario, not second or third chance kind of thing.
Yeah, I have experience like that as well. I remember there are movies where I see like at, I don't know, 9 or 10 in the past, and very poorly off on the backs of long days and when you're tired. And so sometimes that definitely has an effect. Like, let's say Spider-Man Far From Home is a movie that I enjoy. It's a movie that I like, but I was very whatever on it because I feel like we watched it at midnight, I think.
Yeah.
And that kind of was like pushing it for me to watch a movie. And so like I'm not fully alert as I could or should be. I know, and this is one where we have different opinions on this movie, but I know that when we watched Bridge of Spies, I mean, I was very underwhelmed by what I was watching. And in many ways, the reason why I was underwhelmed is because I was under the impression we were going to be watching like a spy thriller, in the sense of like, I was expecting action. I was expecting
James Bond-ish
kind of that
action.
stuff, and that's not what that movie was at all. And it took several watches for me to like figure out what this movie was, and then actually realizing, oh wait, I actually really do love this. And then there are other movies where like you give it multiple viewings,
and it just doesn't click for you.
Like BVS. You know, there's a lot on the screen that I want to like, But every time I've watched that movie, and this may be because every time I've rewatched that movie, it ended up I think there were like several botched audio commentary attempts, I think, with this movie, and it kind of dragged on and on and on, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm trying to think of one recently where I needed like more time to think about. It may have been like in 2018 or something. Oh no, I'll tell you ones that I liked, but then have like gone on to love that were surprising. Shape of Water by Guillermo del Toro. I really liked when I really liked that movie when I first saw it. But and this recently, you know, with acquainting myself with the history of his works, getting The Shape of Water, and just like wow, what
Now
a
you
movie.
get it.
Yeah, and now I fully appreciate that picture, as the old uns like to say, the picture.
Okay, Scorsese.
Yeah, basically. And Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. That one, again, is another example of like, I liked it a lot and called it great when I saw it in the theater first. But, you know, here, a couple of years later, actually 2 years later, as a matter of fact, since it's come out, I have just really grown to full-blown love that movie. Like in many ways, I really wish I could do the ones that have changed. I know the years where we do like these top 10 lists.
Mm-hmm.
I've gone back and like done some revisals or revisions, not reprisals. Watch The Grinch. That's how that got stuck in my head.
I saw that recently, by the way. Again,
You gotta watch it. You gotta.
God damn, like such a clever film. I love it. But I completely get you. Like also, I don't know who it was, but I'm calling bullshit as well. Because like I was like, you know, I'm officially changing my 2017 list. Instead of Logan as my number one, I'm changing it to Star Wars: The Last Jedi. And I don't know if it was you or Peter that said, "No, you can't do that."
Well, not in an official capacity, I feel. I think what's okay is to remind yourself of like what positions they were. I mean, you literally can't go back in time to when we recorded the date and change it now, but I think it's perfectly fine to say that, you know, I definitely love this movie now, today, more so than I did at the time that I made the list. To if I were to make it today, I would make some drastic changes. And I think I did make some drastic changes with 2018 because I put Infinity War, I think, as my number one in 2018. And I love that movie, but this isn't to say that it's aged poorly. I think it's aged well. It's to say that the other movies have aged even better, at least for me. In that case, I know that if I were to do things now, that one would have. And you know what? Looking at it now, I think I mentioned these two. I want to say I did mention these two when we did the Decade show earlier this year,
right?
But it's touch and go for me. It's between Won't You Be My Neighbor and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. How do I pick between that?
That's all it is, Alexis. It's just a leap of faith, you know. But that's the thing with me though. Like I know which one I could easily pick because I had it as my number one.
Boy, yeah.
And that was Into the Spider-Verse.
And you're supposed to be the lifelong Mr. Rogers fan. That's the irony here.
Yeah, and I grew up with Mr. Rogers and adored him. Would even enter the house like with my freaking hoodie and just like zip it up and do the whole, you know, such a good feeling thing. But like that movie, I fell head over heels on it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
With, you know, just like the sheer introduction to Miles, you know, I was like, okay, I'm gonna love that. And he was just a teen, just like jamming along on his headphones, you know. That right there, I was like, okay, I'm fully into this movie because like it set the tone so beautifully. Like, and also like the tribute to like Stan Lee. I think that this is the best Stan Lee tribute to date.
It came around the time of his death, and it felt more I don't know, fitting.
Connected.
Yeah.
Because of that. I mean, because the way the whole message of like, you know, you could wear the mask, you know, and yada 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 with but that was like what Stan Lee wanted, you know. That's what he said about Spider-Man. That's the way he felt about like all his superhero creations, is that, you know, you too could, you know, wear the mask, you could be a superhero, you know. And I think that right there has aged into the Spider-Verse more, you know, each, you know, year as it passes. And I honestly think that it's like in the top 10 echelon of like best comic book movies, you know, in general.
Yeah, I've actually looked back on it. I wanted to find the list that I made for the decade, and I wanted the list of movies that I mentioned, right? And what I wanted to ask you, and this is an interesting, I think, thinker, if you will. So the way that we handled those shows was like we went year by year, and we kind of announced like our top 2 or number 1 movie of that year. Did we ever get to the point of like asking officially what was the number 1 favorite movie for you of the decade?
Ooh.
'Cause that is fucking difficult. Like, if you were to pick your favorite movie of the 2010s.
Holy shit. Like,
well,
okay, I'm looking at my letterboxd here.
Mm-hmm.
God damn, there were so many that I loved this year. That decade.
Too many, in fact. I love all of the movies that I mentioned.
Yeah.
And, I can go off. I'll go first since you're thinking about it. And looking at the movies that I had thrown out there, I threw out Toy Story 3, Hugo, Lincoln, Saving Mr. Banks, Boyhood, Bridge of Spies, La La Land, Star Wars The Last Jedi, Fahrenheit 11/9, Avengers Endgame, Spielberg, Won't You Be My Neighbor, Captain America the Winter Soldier. Spider-Verse would have been on here, but I didn't because I knew you guys would have gotten that covered. It's difficult. I love all of these movies to bit, but if I were to pick one, the one that stuck with me and the one that I continue to watch every year and love anew is The Winter Soldier.
Okay.
That one should be pretty obvious, and it means a lot to me. It always has, and it means more every year. So it's like, it's got to be that movie for me.
For me, it's a toss-up between, because this movie I loved this movie. Regret not seeing it in theaters. The Martian and Knives Out. Yeah.
Really, The Martian. The Martian's great.
The Martian is a phenomenal film.
Dude, man, I was so pissed. I called you that night, like, dude, you want to see this Martian movie with me? Come on, let's go. And you were like, but I'm already in bed and I have my jammies and everything.
I'm such an old man. Yeah, I'm an old man.
Imagine the great time you robbed yourself of.
I know, but like, God damn, The Martian, it's so good, and it's such like a hopeful, movie, and it reminds you of, the better times in life, and it's such a, like, I watch it every freaking year, and it gets better and better and better, and it's just like the cream of the crop. It reminds me of why I like movies to begin with. It's just like that whole journey, you know. And also like I keep on watching it and I want more. But that's what a good movie is supposed to do, you know. I want to see
coming soon to HBO Max, a Ridley Scott Martian series.
Like I want to see what happens to, you know, to Watney afterwards, you know, and I want to know what happens. But then also there's Knives Out, and like
Knives fucking Out. What a movie.
Yeah.
Hey, a movie. No, literally. No, man, that 2019 honestly like had some of the best movies of the whole decade. For me, personally, and Knives Out is definitely up there. And again, I would have had it on this list if I didn't already know that you and your fucking donut hole weren't going to mention this on that show.
That's what she said.
By the way, go watch that. Go listen to that show. We had 2 parts, our decade.
Yeah, that's how long it was.
Yeah, but I thought it was like, honestly, it's one of my favorite podcasts to record. It was so many good movies mentioned.
Yeah.
On there.
But like Knives Out, I mean, first of all,
it's between those two officially, Knives Out and The Martian.
For right now,
there's no other movie that you can think of that could like
Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
I that's what I thought you were gonna pick.
Yeah,
you know.
Okay, officially it's between those 3. But like with Knives Out, like holy shit, because when it was announced that this movie was being done, I didn't care what it would have been about. I didn't care about like what other stuff. It had me at 2 names: Rian Johnson and Daniel Craig. And
oh my god,
it had me at those 2 names. I'm like, I don't care what this movie is about. It could be just Daniel Craig eating a bowl of cereal, you know.
But it was so much more than that.
But it was so much more than that, and I can't. I crack up at Michael Shannon's lines. Cookies. You want to eat? Eat. And it has like such lines like, what was the Nazi doing, masturbating in the bathroom or something like that, donut holes, you know, and you have a regurgitative nature to Mistruthon. Just like the lines that come out with it, you know, and just like, I don't know, it's such a perfect film to me, like the cozy feeling about watching this movie, even though like the most of the people in this movie is a piece of shit. But it just like it feels good, you know.
No, it feels good. Like people like to attach the deconstruct narrative to Rian Johnson. He does the same thing every time. To me, I think Rian Johnson, perhaps more than anyone in the business, understands what really makes a great movie. Honestly, I've never seen a less than great Rian Johnson movie. Peter said that first. I'll repeat that. But it's the truth.
Because he'll give you hell if you don't.
I think Rian understands perfectly what cinema is, and he also understands, like, I love how he's playing in these genres, but he also, I think the way that he constantly refers back to it. I listened him say on the commentary for Knives Out, which you should listen to, by the way. It is so good. I inundated myself this year in whatever audio commentaries I owned, because I personally find them to be very informative, and kind of like I don't know, like it almost feels like you're going to film school when you're like listening to the filmmakers.
It's like taking a master class from, you know, the director.
Basically,
himself.
Yeah, and you're finding out all the different little details about it. But he refers to it as like, I always have to remind myself, like, with Ana de Armas, she is the center, and she is what makes this a real movie, in the sense that this is why people are going to love this movie. It's not just all of the fun, flair, comedy, absurdity that's going on. It's about her, and she is a reflection of us, and we're rooting for her.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's more than his movies are the definition of way more than beyond the surface. There's nothing surface level with him. Like, there's something definitely deep going on at every part of his movies, and I really wish
like when
I could think like that. Yeah.
Like when he did The Last Jedi, you know, yeah, you have your pew pew pews and and all that stuff, and your Yoda, you know, you have all that shit. But the thing is that it goes much more reflective on looking at the lore of Star Wars at large, and that right there. I mean, this movie, like, it had a freak flag and it flew it proudly, and that's the thing that this movie that this should have been the movie that unified all fans regardless, because it was like, hey, Star Wars can be fun and groovy if we all play fair kind of thing.
Toy Story 3 reference.
Yeah, I could keep on coming, everyone. But it really cemented that Rian Johnson, like, he knew what's up. He knew like Star Wars as much as George Lucas did, you know.
I think at this point I'm convinced that Rian Johnson understood what Star Wars was all about better than anybody, including George Lucas. Honestly. 'Cause I think he understands of the essence of what Star Wars meant to people because of what it meant to him, and the substance behind that and the story to it. And no one else seems to feel the same, it seems like, with everything else Star Wars related.
But that's the thing, because like, this is like, we're going back to 1977, where Star Wars was like first introduced to the public, and people got their first, you know, reception. And a lot of people over the years, Star Wars has meant a plentitude of different things.
Yes, it's different things to different people. That's basically what it is. It's in some cases it's drastically different things to different people.
And that's the thing, though, is that when you have a movie that's preaching you, no, this is what Star Wars is, it's gonna divide people. It's like a lot of people. It's like people with different color prisms in their irises in their eyes, and the color green is different to everybody else. You know, you see it as like how you and I see green, but another person might view green as like, oh, it's more of a bluish tint, right? You know, or it's more yellow. You know, green is more yellow, and that's the way Star Wars is still. You know, I mean, it is the most like, and I guess that's a good thing, but also its downfall, because Star Wars, the way that people view Star Wars is that, you know, you come for, you know, the swashbuckling action that a lot of people crave in Star Wars. That's why a lot of people went nuts in The Mandalorian when, like, spoilers, Boba Fett showed up and freaking wrecked all those stormtroopers. I was watching it with my family, and my stepdad was like, hell yeah, Boba, you know, kind of thing. And like that, and that is what Star Wars meant for, you know, my stepfather, you know, swashbuckling action that, you know, harkens back to like the days of Errol Flynn, where, you know, he fights, where people fight and good guys, you know, win and the bad guys lose, you know. And that's what Star Wars means to a lot of people. To us, to like somebody like me, what's more meaningful in Star Wars is the more spiritual aspects of Star Wars, and like more interconnected character tissue, that mean more on the, you know, deep below the surface. Like, for example, what got me interested in The Mandalorian was that, you know, I thought it was just going to be that swashbuckling show of good versus bad, you know, swords, guns, and all that stuff. And I thought that's what The Mandalorian was going to be. But the thing that keeps me interested in this show is the dynamic between the Mandalorian and Grogu. And that right there is what means a lot to me with the Mandalorian and keeps me watching.
Evidently to a lot of people as well. They love that dynamic.
Because
Very much so.
Because like that's such a subversion. Again, this is what like Rian Johnson did. It's a subversion of what, you know, I thought it was going to be. And I was just going to be like, okay, but I wonder how long this, you know, shtick is going to last until Grogu appeared. And I'm calling him Grogu, everyone. Sue me.
That's the name.
But when, because like I was fearing that he was just going to be this badass kind of person, but he's actually a very sentimental person. He's a very, you know, he's very fatherly to his child, you know, and that, I think that's the part I loved about it, because there is a sensitive side to this. And when it comes to Star Wars, you know, the spiritual side of like what the Force is, you know, and like how it is complete balance of energy, like something that Yoda hearkened back to Empire Strikes Back, you know, it surrounds us, you know, and that like whatever's surrounding you, it's a perfect balance of a different, you know, echelon of different energies, different sources, and you know, it's a blanket, and it encapsulates whatever you're feeling at the time. And that's what Star Wars is to me. It could be something completely different to you. You know, I will never know what Star Wars means to you, because that is your thing and your relationship with Star. This is a Red Spotlight Entertainment podcast. You're not going to get very far without a Star Wars conversation.
It always goes back to that.
It always goes back to Star Wars. But the way that Star Wars feel, you know, it means to you might be completely different than what I feel about Star Wars. And I think that's where a lot of people are especially in this day and age with the internet, because you have this bit where everybody has their view of something, and that's the way it needs to be. You know, and that's where you get all the divisiveness. You know, that's why the political climate that we have is such a mess. Like, nobody can meet each other. Again, pushing, you know, the whole, you know, Democrat, Republican, you know, put that to the side. You know, it's the fact that like nobody could see eye to eye on anything. And that's where a lot of these troubles, because the way you see something is just the way it needs to be, you know, and like that leads to more like toxic confusion amongst everybody. And you know that it doesn't just stop at Star Wars, and that's the way that we are, you know, conditioned as a nation, especially because everybody's more entitled now, and that's where people need to like. No, I'm sorry I'm ranting, but like that's where people need to like learn, is that, you know, you're not the center of the universe, even though you think you are, you know, and a lot of people have that entitled mentality, and the world and universe doesn't owe you jack shit. You know, you're by yourself in this world, and that's the way that this universe works. If you don't like it, sorry, but that's just the way it is. This universe doesn't owe you shit.
I think you really unlocked a Pandora's box there, because as we've been talking about for the last hour and a half of things that we've enjoyed covering over the last 5 years, you really just walked into the landmine of what has been increasingly the least favorite thing to talk about. The most annoying thing to talk about in the last 5 years has been the ever irritating discourse of anything.
The Star Wars.
Well, Star Wars in particular, right? But it's not exclusive to that. And it feels like as the years have gone by, almost every movie to an extent has to have some kind of divisive discourse. And we see it all on film Twitter of all places.
Yeah, film Twitter, which is like a never-ending cesspool of people screaming out, "This is the way it works." And again, that's the way that it, the entitledness, and also like this is where like film media as well, because like yesterday's news and everything like and I see it with you, admittedly, like the most negative news is top news, and it shouldn't be. Negative news shouldn't be top, conversation, top billing to anything. Because I think that has led the world to be a little bit more negative on the negative side.
Yeah.
And I think that needs to change drastically. And it's just all in a matter of fundamental change that I think like going through therapy, I'm gonna get a little deep here, but going through therapy I've learned to like let go things that really don't matter, and like negative energy that just doesn't matter and shouldn't matter, like how people think of you, like people are gonna think what they're gonna think of you no matter what, but it's just like whatever you think of yourself is like the most important part, and like getting rid of that negative like connotations with you. And I think that that's what the world needs, is just like if everybody could follow that, like just eliminate like negative connotations with themselves, everybody else, I think that the world could be possibly, quotations, possibly a little better off. I'm not saying the world will be perfect, because people, let's face it, we're a stupid bunch of mammals that just are floating in existence somewhere on a little speck we like to call Earth, and like it's just all in a matter of what what is meaningful and what not. Did what I say make any sense?
No, it makes perfect sense, and I'm in complete agreement. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I have become more aware of, especially in the last year, I'm going back to November or so of last year, I've been much more cognizant of my approach when it comes to the shows that we do with Red Spotlight, in the sense that, yeah, a lot of the stuff that we do talk about is of a negative connotation. But especially lately in recent months, I've felt myself becoming much more measured. Because I think, and for long-time listeners, I'm sure that the name Alexis Soto, I'm sure in large reason why I was going back to the beginning of this episode where Kyle like cast me as Mr. and Mrs. Bluth, has been associated with bombastic, fiery, and explosive in an unrelenting fashion.
Quite so stylishly.
And that doesn't mean that I don't get that way every now and then, but I've learned myself to hold back on those things, because I don't want to overwhelm people. But also with me in this journey that we call life, I know myself, and you come to a point where you're aware that certain things that used to bother you just don't really bother you anymore. Like I know in recent years, well, let's go back a couple of years, right? In this podcast, it really got to me. And you may say that it still does now in some way. But not really, not the way that it used to, because it doesn't matter anymore. Basically, the thing is, I've learned to value my own voice and value the things that I love without needing the validation of anybody else's opinion that it's good or not. And that's the journey that I've had to overcome.
And that's good. I mean, you're still in the process of like learning that journey.
Yeah.
But like the process, but like everybody goes through their journeys different ways, and I think that that's the most important thing. Like, I feel like this is the most like personally deep episode that we've ever done.
Well, I guess that's what happens when you get 5 years deep into it, huh?
Yeah, and also it is 1:30 a.m. on a Sunday. This is the way it goes, you know, dude, like if I was smoking pot, like this would be like this would be way deeper than it is now.
You really don't think that over the course of all these years, people who may have stumbled across this and listened haven't assumed that some of us haven't, I don't know, smoked while recording this?
And who's to say we haven't, huh?
I mean, we kind of just did. But I want to give some examples of things that in the past I've bitched and moaned about.
And the list is plentiful.
Oh yeah, think of Finding Dory. Think about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Oh my god, especially Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah,
I went on a tear. La La Land was one that was really irritating for a long time.
You completely shut down, and
dude, that's not an exaggeration. I shut down.
No, with one audio commentary in particular, you were fearing this audio commentary.
Endgame. Yeah, and you know what's so strange is I don't know why. I don't know why I made such a big deal about it. I look back on that particular occasion, and I was struggling to find a reason for why I was acting that way. You know, we have behavioral incidents sometimes that in the moment make perfect sense to us, and then you look back on it and you realize to yourself, perhaps you mishandled that. That really wasn't the best approach. And so, like, in the last year, I've done a lot of soul searching. I've done a lot of reevaluating as to how I handle certain things, how I look at certain things. And while that doesn't mean that there won't be any future Alexis Soto rants, there always will be. I like to think of myself as, you know, more mature than I used to be. I know, because I think a lot of people in my life from like the age of 15, maybe even younger than that, have like, oh my God, you act so mature for your age. I don't know, maybe, but that didn't mean that I was. You know, maybe I did think of myself as that, and maybe that was a mistake. I'll tell you that the me of now definitely would not have made the mistakes. Some of the personal issues that you and I have had in our friendship definitely wouldn't have occurred knowing basically who I am now versus what I was then.
When my father first met you, he was like, you know, oh, the attorney. He called you the attorney.
And I hate attorneys. People have tried to push law school on me, and I've just like cringed. That's not really me. There are a lot of people who think, honestly, there've been a lot of people who think like on first glance, because I'm like into politics, that they've confused me for a conservative. And I really cringe at that, because like, what the fuck? I'm like, all right. But the point is, like, you know, we all grow and we kind of become slightly different, and we learn better as we get older. And I'm finding that out. And I know, speaking on my behalf personally, that when I've gone back and listened at certain shows that we've done, whether it be as early as our first year or as late as last year, there are things that I said that I cringe at and so desperately wished I could have handled that moment better. And not just in the sense of like communicating myself better, but not also being an ass, which there was a good couple years on this show where I really let it rip and did not give a fuck how I was like, I could have been portrayed.
It's because it's where your mindset was, you know, politically and whatever. Which shouldn't be an excuse, but nevertheless. But, you know, you got to keep moving, you know, as long as you remember all the people you used to be, you know. That's the way the cookie crumbles, and that's the way that things work, and that's the way life works, you know. That's the thing though, is that once you become stagnant in your ways, you pretty much are a lost cause to humanity, because you're supposed to evolve, you know. You're supposed to evolve as a person and a human being. This time last year, I'm a completely different person than I was last year. In the years prior to that, you know, I'm a completely different human being. I have different ethics. I have different ways of viewing. You know, my mindset is less bitter than last year, because like I absolutely hated everything. I still hate people, but I don't think that's going away anytime soon. But
I'm not sure that should, though, considering how people have been acting. Let's face it.
yeah. But like my self-worth, the way I view self-worth is different than ever before. Therapy, it helps, guys. It fucking helps. Therapy, medication, wherever it's available, if you need it. But like psychologically, I'm different. I feel different. I'm more satisfied with things now than I was last year and current, you know, state of beings.
Mm-hmm.
I have goals now that I'm slowly but surely trying to reorganize all that stuff. But like that's the thing of life, you know. Evolve, you know, move,
Grow.
Because, you know, keep moving forward, as it were. And that's how life should be, you know. I mean, what are you, you know? There's an old, you know, saying that goes like, you know, a rolling stone, you know, gathers no moss. Wait.
Is that what it was? Kyle was looking very puzzled. People.
Yeah, no. I'm going back in my mind. I'm like,
right.
Was that the proverb? Yeah, it was, because a rolling stone gathers no moss. You know, because like once you're still, you know, you become covered. A rock becomes covered in moss. You know, more things. A rolling stone keeps on going and going and going. You know, I don't know if that's the right analogy to use.
It could be. It's 1:38 a.m. I mean,
it is.
Who's gonna blame you at this point? But I like to also
it is
think,
way past my bedtime.
I like to also think that, you know, we were in our journey of growing as people. A lot of the TV shows and movies that we've absorbed have kind of helped with our journey. You just mentioned Doctor Who, right? When you said about like, as long as you remember the people that you used to be. That's an example of how something, as a lot of people dismiss it, oh, it's a TV show, it's like it rots your brain or whatever, like shit like that. And to an extent, sure, whatever. But I continue to be impressed by how much I learn from just watching movies and television shows. Honestly.
And how much you learn about yourself, because because the thing is that when you learn about, you know, when you reach a new feeling for something, or a new story or a new idea that's been brought up upon it, like a movie or TV show, you know, even to extend video game, like I felt completely different after I played Red Dead Redemption 2. And like just like different art mediums in general, just like how you feel and like the different feelings that you feel, you know, it eventually becomes another tiding point in your evolution as a human being. You know, like Last Jedi, you learned that, you know, what is the main I guess thesis for The Last Jedi is that, failure is the greatest teacher, and like
Failure's okay as long as you learn from it.
And that right there I took to heart. I was like, wow, this is, I needed to hear this.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to hear this because like I was striving to like, be a perfect son, be a perfect, different things. But like I was realizing that, nobody's perfect. Everybody makes mistakes. That wasn't an attainable
goal at all. That wasn't in place.
Yeah. And, failure is the greatest teacher. Failing is the most key important part of being a human being too, and you can't live, a hubrisal life, in terms of that, that strive for valor, and honestly, like it helps you along. Again, we're going back to Star Wars, as one would do. But
if I may, I think a good way to kind of like wrap, to kind of bring this conversation full circle, and a lot of what I think you're finding out in our conversation is how much the movies have meant to us and how much we've found out about each other and how much we've grown as people because of the media that we have consumed. But it still doesn't really click for some people. But I have here a quote, not the whole thing, but it's a piece of a quote from Guillermo del Toro, who is perhaps to me the best representative or ambassador, if you will, on cinema, because he really gets it. And he's talking about here about the magic of a movie, right? He says, movies are an audio-visual experience, and some of the most sacred, intimate moments we have with movies are moments that are not possible to put into words. If you don't analyze them, a turn of an actor that's hit with the light, and the dolly camera pushes just so, and the music swells, and it's magic. You can like whatever you want, but I think part of the magic about movies is that when we least expect it to move us and touch us, in some ways, that's your kind of first realization of like, oh, wow, this movie not only is working, but it's really working on me, right? But that's kind of like, that's the magic of cinema, is that you can be so enraptured in one particular moment of the movie. And in your mind, you may not piece together why in that moment, but that's kind of the point, right? Is that you are drifted away to a space that nothing else can take you besides that moment in a movie. Yeah. Hold on. Continue talking. I have another quote to look up and everything. Do you have another quote? Well, yeah. I have yeah, absolutely. So I think like all of us here that have been on Red Spotlight over the years, in many ways, these friendships have been forged because of our commonality of a passion, of a love for movies. We all were brought up with movies, and we all have continued to have a passion for them. And that literally is the basis for all of our friendships. Me and you, with Alexis, with Peter and David. That's where it kind of all stemmed from. That's where we found our commonality and we grew to like each other as people. And I just think that's a very special thing. That's not certainly how I expected to meet my best friends. And yet here we are. And to close off this thing, from the last lines of a beloved TV show, there's a lot of beauty in ordinary things. Isn't that kind of the point? And that is said by Pam Halpert from The Office. Yeah. And
And that is very much true, like just ordinary things, just being ordinary people, that's the way the cookie crumbles, And so like that's the way that, things, just finding things that are absolutely gorgeous in discussion, art, and whatever the human capacity, evolves itself into, that's beauty, and that's ordinary, that's the way it should be, evolution, that's ordinary, and that's beautiful. And again, isn't that the point of life?
Yeah. How did we get here? We really went we really went full circle, didn't we?
Well, my mother and father, they went at it one night.
Okay, that's no.
Your mother and father went at it at one point as well. You know what? It's so amazing. Everybody on this earth is here because one person went at it with another person. Like, that's mind-blowing. That's a lot of sex, dude. Like, holy shit. There's a lot of sex that happens on this world. I mean, 7.2 billion people on this world. That's like 7.2 billion people smashing at one point or the other. That's a lot. Holy shit. That blows my mind. Just the fact that people exist, because like in all the, again, this is where I'm getting deep, but like you look into the way that life works, that's where life starts, is that one little seed wins it all, and you are the byproduct of that happening. So really, the 7.2 billion people on this world is a miracle all in itself, because there is a huge statistical, boundary of that, of you shouldn't exist, but you do. And I think that's incredible because of that. And again, 7.2 billion people smashed. That's a lot. So yeah, as soon as I referenced procreation, Alexis Soto exited the chat. So I'm left to my own devices. I'm going to say...
Listen. Hold on a minute. I think that is an example of the conversation having run its course.
Not run its course, because you could begin a lot of things with procreation, because we're talking about life, right? And all life itself begins with procreation,
right? Okay, that's true. Do we really need to explore it, though? I think that's...
And much like Pink Floyd's The Wall, we're gonna begin where it ended. So anyway, like I said before, it took me 10 hours to make that video, and honestly, I'm very proud of that video. It is one of my best. I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of the James Bond supercut that I did. I'm proud of the Walt Disney thing that I reenacted. I mean, I tried to get like the frame perfectly and all that stuff. But the thing that I'm also proud of is the fact that on YouTube we are at 1,000 subscribers. So, yay! Yay us! Yeah! So, anyway, Alexis, if I may,
take it away.
Hold on. Okay. Did you like what you heard here? And if you did, you could check us out everywhere you listen to podcasts, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Castbox.fm, our home for the Red Spot Entertainment Network. You could also check out the Fantasy Fair and To the Table, Bond and Beyond, whenever that comes back. But yeah, so without further ado, I'm Kyle Lira. With me is Alexis Soto, And as always, stay under the spotlight, people. Bye.